series and the reading you are about to see were produced by the Lannan Foundation. The Foundation's literary program is dedicated to supporting outstanding contemporary literature and presenting exceptional writers to a wider audience.
I'm going to read from Under the Shadow, which is my most recent book. And I suppose I should say a few words about this before I do read. It's a book of 59 separate episodes, or chapters, if you will, although it is in no sense a novel. I don't quite know what it is. It's a collection of episodes which hang together or don't hang together. Some of them correspond, some of them connect. The people in some episodes reappear in other episodes, sometimes slightly changed, sometimes exactly the same, sometimes older, sometimes younger. And they live in a kind of world which is not only timeless, but, if you will, placeless. If you read the entire book, I hope that the reader of the entire book would discover that the book does indeed have a kind of cohesion that perhaps this evening's reading will not make clear, but I will try to read passages which in some sense make the cohesion of the book clear. In any event, let me begin. Fire. The publisher, Emiliano Soro, has recently become enthralled by old news accounts of what was sensationally called the Holocaust of books, the maniac's inferno, and less often, the destruction of evidence. He confides to close friends in the communications and media industry, or as cynics sometimes describe it, the publishing business, that he'd very much like to find a top-notch professional writer, perhaps a cultural journalist turned powerhouse novelist, to do a history of the fire. He'd like someone with flair and intelligence and a respect for the public's well-defined taste, someone to evoke the day itself, the events leading up to the disaster, the people and accidents and coincidences, as well as, of course, as Mr. Soro puts it, the blunders and heartaches, the heroism and cowardice, the self-sacrifice of so many plain, ordinary people, the laughter, the tears, the joy and the agony, the searing questions and shocking answers, the sober postmortems, the why. His colleagues nod and smile at the sound of these familiar, comforting words. Once again, they realize what a wondrous business they serve. So far as Mr. Soro can ascertain, the fire was set by the admitted maniac Jonathan Tancred, so that he might destroy the entire inventory of the largest book warehouse in the world. According to Tancred, he felt that he was destroying evidence, destroying what he obsessively and repeatedly called official memories. A transcript of his interrogation notes that he said that there are too many memories already. In the course of this interrogation, Tancred spoke over and over again of a blue metal laundry hamper, a half-opaque glass bathroom door, which would not close completely, a toy Zeppelin, and 3 young women in luminous white dresses by the shore of a dark lake. He insisted that the razing of the warehouse would allow a new past to be born, a wholly different past. A photograph taken at the very height of the fire shows a group of firemen fruitlessly battling the terrific blaze. The walls are about to collapse, burying most of them beneath tons of scorching debris. 2 of the men standing on ladders leaning against one of the walls are surely aware of their imminent doom. In the foreground of the picture, back to the camera, another fireman has a silver bugle slung across his shoulder. Records reveal that Tancred, when shown this photograph, said that the memories, said that the tunes locked inside the bugle were also official memories. And so he had seen to the disappearance of the horn that very day. As Mr. Sorrow reads this, he smiles as the words, "Day of the Silver Bugle," come to him. It is wonderful to publish books that one loves, important books, responsible books, books that make a difference. So he thinks. A week later, Tancred receives a letter from the Sorrow Communications Group, SORCO, at the Palepsin Hospital for the Criminally Insane. He knows that envelopes contain memories, disguised as scripted messages, couched in clever alphabetical codes. He tears the letter into strips and somehow sets it afire. Snowman. One morning, a snowman appeared by the side of the road in front of the country house owned for many years by the famous dancer Olga Shavonin. The stark tree behind and to the left of the figure held its usual complement of snow, most of it, not unnaturally, on the windward side of the trunk. Somewhat surprisingly, the snow looked very much like fresh white paint, or even more surprisingly, like a drawing of fresh white paint. That is, a drawing of, so to speak, nothing. The snowman's face was somewhat debauched, sinister even, although no one remarked on this. No smoke came from Madame Chavonin's chimney, although inside the house were, in addition to the dancer, Edward Carmichael, the bel canto singer, Louis Bill, a charmingly unworldly tool and die maker, Isidore Martin, the biologist, and Claude Urbain, the internationally acclaimed polo player. They seemed warm and comfortable as they chatted amiably before a crackling fire. So the lack of smoke was indeed perplexing, and remains so. The snowman, his tiny eyes glittering in the sunlight that slanted through the dead trees, was discovered to be holding a dried branch which leaned against his shoulder and arm. It may well have been thought of as a rifle or a fishing rod or any number of other things, a staff, for instance, or a spear. On closer inspection, the snowman's aspect seemed not so much sinister as demented. The fact that his mouth was fashioned from dried leaves, grit, pebbles, and nameless detritus added to this impression. At certain moments, his eyes closed and then opened again, although this probably did not actually happen. Inside the house, the group of friends talked over the mysterious letter which concerned certain scattered events of some 50 years earlier. The letter spoke of a woman at a sink, a barren backyard, an empty kitchen, and a voice from behind a door. Other occurrences were also detailed, although Louis Bill was hesitant to speak of them, as indeed were the others. There was a rumor at the time that a snowfall was also mentioned in the letter. Mentioned in passing, yet mentioned nonetheless. Isidore Martin noticed the snowman, and everyone crowded to the windows. There he was. Tree. Bill Gillard, a self-taught historian possessed of that which he thought of as total objectivity, came across the true reason for the large tree. For a time, he kept the discovery to himself. No one knew why Gillard, usually quite gregarious and talkative, would do this. The townspeople grew sullen. Sleep came hard to Gillard. He was not used to carrying such a burden of secrecy. He noted, although ultimately it did not matter, that the tree was an old one, that it could be considered historical, that generations had revered it, more or less, although there had always been an embarrassing minority intent upon drunken holiday fun and furtive adultery, usually committed in parked cars or locked bathrooms, and complete with stains and lost items of clothing. Gillard tried to describe the tree, but there didn't seem to be any point to it, especially since a traveling waiter passing through on his way to what he called the annual feast told him that the tree looked very much like a mammoth ivy. The waiter, who had been drinking gin for 4 or 5 days, may have been mistaken. Gillard drew a sketch of the tree, which has been preserved, and which was to have accompanied this brief account. It does not appear, for although it is surely a representation of something, that something is not a tree. The tree reminded Gillard of a sweet and vivacious girl with whom he had been in love when he was 19. There seemed no connection between the tree and the girl, but Gillard was inhabited by the tree, and so everything followed the path of the tree. Poet. Leonard Bacon, whose legend grows the greater the longer his poems elude discovery, has been dead for 25 years. And on the occasion of this anniversary of his demise, his admirers, whose fervor more than makes up for their relatively small number, once again sift through the few facts, the odds and ends of memorabilia, the fleeting references, which it is to be admitted multiply with each passing year, that constitute all that is presently known of his fabled life. There is predictably a crazed fringe element that insists that Bacon is still alive and that a farmyard animal or a large shrub was cremated in his stead. None of the subscribers to this and other demented theories can offer a shred of evidence for their conjectures. There were few things in Bacon's study able to shed light on the sort of life he led. His address book, although crammed with entries, turned out to be a directory to the dead, the missing, the pseudonymous, and the non-existent. He had neither parents nor siblings and was a childless bachelor whose sexual life was apparently fulfilled in the affectless world of prostitution. His childhood, adolescence, young manhood, in a word, his past, had quite simply vanished as completely as his poetry. In addition to the useless address book, there was left a notorious box of glass vials, a collection of photographs of erotically posed women in, as they say, scanty costume, all of them resembling, astonishingly so, the first ladies of the past 50 years. And a copy of Pirandello, True or What? By Benno Deluxe, described as a professor of radical projection theater, inscribed, "To Lenny, with a lot of real awe, Benny." There was also found, of course, the only known photograph of Bacon, a famous image, reproduced so many thousands of times that it has by now the familiar presence of a religious icon. His decision to destroy his voluminous notebooks and manuscripts in a surge of disgust followed a solitary hiking trip through the foothills of the Zoe Mountains, so biographical zealots believe. The classic photograph mentioned shows him standing at the edge of a cliff, his feet firmly set, left hand held out for balance, right hand grasping his staff, the latter planted on the ground. Behind him recede vistas of snowy peaks, stretching to the horizon and the pale colors of a wintry sunset. He's wearing trousers, actually roomy breeches of bingo cloth, a plate mercy sweater with all natural grasses intact, and a Vixit scarf, signed. His staff is a hand-rubbed rumplestick whose intricate carvings showed depraved scenes of village life. And on his back he carries a small knapsack known to outdoorsmen as a puta bag. His cap, socks, and boots are well made and sturdy. He is staring into the distance, astonished that he can see with perfect clarity for miles. Far off, there is a half-clothed woman wandering about the barren backyard of a small one-family brick house. She seems to be searching for someone, or perhaps avoiding someone who is searching for her. She walks aimlessly around the small enclosure, her arms crossed over her icy breasts, her bare thighs blue with cold, her teeth chattering. Bacon takes this sight as revelatory of a profound mystery, the illumination of which will permit him access to the most sublime reaches and truths of art. In understanding this, he instantly realizes the weakness, empty professionalism, and vile transparency of his life's work. There could not help but be, many questions concerning the photograph. Where was it really taken? Is that truly snow on the peaks, or light reflected off vast fields of paper? Why is Bacon's puta bag so obviously empty? How do we even know that this man is Leonard Bacon? And what evidence is there that the poet saw a woman? Each question occasions yet another. Each answer demands elaboration. Throughout these lucubrations, Bacon's genius is reaffirmed, strengthened, and marveled at. The thought of what his poems must have been like renders his devotees stupid with pleasure. There is so far one line of his verse to have surfaced and to be judged authentic. It is believed to be the last line of a sestina called Elliptic Derangements. And yet, what magic in the white balloon? It must be confessed that the generally accepted interpretation of the photograph has of late come under increasingly heavy attack, especially by, it should come as no surprise, the members of the Balloon League.
Now I'm going to begin with what's going to be a sort of shock about this book, Under the Shadow, and the construction of novels in general. I guess I'll do it bluntly. There's a novel called Impressions of Africa by a Frenchman named Raymond Roussel. He was a very peculiar writer. He then wrote another book called New Impressions of Africa. This Raymond Roussel is one of the secret influences on 20th century literature. He is an influence on Sorrentino, on John Ashbery, who's translated some of his work, on Harry Matthews, on Kenward Elmsley. And the work has a mysteriousness of composition. In order to publish New Impressions of Africa, the work was not long enough. He felt he needed pictures. These pictures were done by an anonymous artist.
Not anonymous.
Well, you tell the story.
No, you tell the story.
No, you tell the story.
Raymond Roussel wrote a poem called New Impressions of Africa, Nouvelle Impression d'Afrique, which was, has nothing whatsoever to do with Impressions of Africa. And Raymond Roussel was never in Africa and had no desire to be there. New Impressions of Africa is a long poem of 4 cantos. I won't go into the remarkable construction of this poem because it's neither here nor there for our purposes or for my purposes in any event. But as Michael said, when the book was completed, Roussel felt that it was much too thin to publish. It was the proverbial slender book of verse. In any event, New Impressions of Africa, being the thin book that it was, disturbed Roussel. He was, of course, paying for its publication himself. Nobody would publish Roussel. So he hired a hack artist called H.A. Zio, who had turned his hand to everything. In no sense was he an artist. He was a hack draftsman, if you will. And he asked, he never saw Zo, never spoke to Zo. He found Zo with the aid of a private detective. And he gave Zo a commission. And the commission that he gave Zo was to make for him 59 drawings, which Roussel then decided to incorporate into his book, New Impressions of Africa. However, he wanted these drawings incorporated into the book in the uncut pages of the book, so that Roussel's text would appear on the recto page. The drawing would be inside the two uncut pages, and then the verso of the next page would be blank. Then would be Roussel's text. Inside the next two pages would be one of Zo's drawings. In other words, Roussel didn't give a damn whether you looked at Zo's drawings or not. He just used them as a way to bulk up the book. What's most interesting about this is that Zo was given no instructions. He was given the commission to make 59 drawings, and Roussel refused to allow Zo to know what his poem was about. So Zo worked over a period of about 6 months and did 59 remarkably banal pen and ink drawings, which of course have no captions and which refer to absolutely nothing in Roussel's poem. I've been looking at these drawings over a period of maybe 10 or 12 years, and every time I looked at them, I became more fascinated with them, because in their very triteness, there's something haunting and mysterious and eerie about them, because the people in the drawings all look as if they're doing something very strange, except that what they're doing is not strange at all. It's just you have no reason to know, you have no way of knowing why they're doing the things they're doing. The other thing that's interesting is that many of the people in the drawings look as if they're the same people. Perhaps 5 years earlier, 5 years later, they look as if they sort of know each other. In like the 5th drawing, you'll have 2 men who look as if they're the same men who reappear in like the 28th drawing. Well, I looked at these pictures for 10 or 12 years, wondering how I could use them. And what I did was write Under the Shadow. Under the Shadow is really, there are 59 chapters in Under the Shadow, and each chapter is really a retelling, or it's a telling of what I think is going on in the drawing. That's what Under the Shadow is.
This is called Moon. Dr. Ronald Leflave adjusts the viewfinder on his telescope and prepares to examine the surface of the moon. High and full and gleaming, far above the predictable and complacent town in which he lives alone and practices medicine. He is a mediocre physician, and although he has never been directly responsible for anyone's death, he has made his small contribution to the misery of the world. He has no gift for the medical arts, and to escape the unsatisfying life chosen for him 30 years earlier, he has become something of an astronomer, and at the present time is writing a monograph on aspects of the moon as they relate to mood shifts in the middle-aged professional. In this case, perhaps not surprisingly, himself. He is flattered to find that he has moods and that they shift, since his mother taught him that moods do not exist. He peers into the viewfinder, sharpens the focus, and is surprised, amazed would be a better word, to see a man of about 35, splendid in a white linen suit and borsalino, sitting with 3 young women in pale pastel dresses and wide straw hats. They are, Dr. Leflave looks carefully, picnicking.
in the deep shade of huge trees overhanging the shore of a quiet lake. Dr. Laflave leans back, alarmed, since the telescope is aimed directly at the moon. He puts his eye to the viewfinder once again. Although only a few seconds have passed, the man, his hat still on, has mounted one of the young women, and their bodies writhe determinedly amid a cloud of white underclothes. The other two young women, some 20 or 30 yards down the shore, have neatly placed their shoes and stockings on the grassy bank, and their skirts held modestly close to their dainty thighs, wade in the clear shallows. Dr. Laflave looks back at the lovers and then, although ashamed, watches, immobile, as they climb into orgasm. One of the young woman's satin slippers dangles tremblingly from the foot, which she has convulsively thrust straight up into the mild summer air. The doctor abruptly pulls himself away from the telescope and the unlikely scene it has somehow discovered. He is aroused and feels himself on the brink of what Roberto Arlt calls the blazing darkness of carnal anguish. How alone he is, absolutely, profoundly alone, and far from the empty white moon. Priest. On this dim, cold day, the church is almost empty. One man, beautifully dressed in a dark gray suit, which is a perfect, if somewhat affectedly sober compliment to the weather, kneels at the altar rail to receive the Eucharist. The priest celebrant, when he was but 19, fell in love with Isabella Stella, a summer girl, as the locals would have surely termed her. The soft trochees of her name set him burning, darkly, darkly. The priest, it seems, is talking to the worshiper, who looks up at him, but not in surprise. Isabella's sister Lona was stupidly drowned in the shallows at the far side of the lake in a cruel and ominous accident just before Labor Day. The family left with Lona's body the day after her death, and the young man knew that Isabella would never again want to think about the lake, or the summer, or him. In time, he became a priest, surprising himself. Often over the years, he would sit and look out the window, or at the wall, thinking perhaps of deaths. In the subtle evenings of that strange murdered summer, Isabella wore a scent called White Sunset. It was fresh and breezy, deliciously dry and clean, the smell of sun-dazzled water and virgins. The priest is talking to the worshiper, who is smiling up at him. In the best tradition of melodrama, as our age understands melodrama, Isabella became the very image of an expensive prostitute, serving the arcane and exquisite aberrations of statesmen, diplomats, religious leaders, business executives, and celebrities of both sexes. Now the priest is backing away from the altar rail, the chalice held thoughtlessly in his hand, his face flushed, his acolyte in panic, looking about for assistance. The church has in it but 7 old women in black, oblivious to all but their God, this gentle vanguard of sweet death. The man kneeling at the rail is, understandably, Isabella. Her brilliant androgyny has been of no small importance to her spectacular success as a fabled whore. To complete the sad fiasco, she wears White Sunset. The priest stumbles and drops the chalice. The acolyte bursts into nervous tears, bewildered. Summer is months away. This is Casino. The Enamel Club was internationally renowned as the casino that permitted to play only those who no longer knew how to do anything else but gamble. The atmosphere of the club was, it might be imagined, raw, electric, and suffused with danger and bleak despair. Men bought chips with markers backed by their failing businesses and unattended investments, their cars and houses. Women pledged their wardrobes, credit accounts, and children. And those the club managers deemed attractive enough were permitted to endorse vouchers promising future sexual labors for periods of up to 5 years of what would be, in fact, indentured prostitution. That lives were constantly being destroyed filled the casino with a thrilling and reckless energy, and awestruck, voyeuristic visitors were quite willing to pay absurdly high fees simply to watch the action on the floor. Many of them, pale and trembling and sticky with cold sweat, had to be helped to their cars or rooms after an hour or two of watching the gamblers in their hopeless ecstasy. The main gambling room, with tables for craps, roulette, blackjack, faro, chemin de fer, and baccarat, was not unlike such rooms everywhere. Although the remarkable mullioned windows on 3 sides of the room, each framed by richly brocaded drapes, and the silver Louis XIV lamps hanging over each table served to make the enamel club unique. This special ambiance, this sophisticated setting for pervasive disaster, was broken one night at the very moment that a middle-aged man at the roulette table had signed over his wife so as to be able to cover his bets on impair. As other players put down their bets, there was discerned a commotion under the table, directly beneath the wheel itself. The croupier quickly lifted the heavy felt tablecloth to reveal a young man dressed obstreperously and incorrectly in a green tweed suit, Tyrolean hat, and brogans, mounted atop a woman almost twice his age, whose evening gown, a classic Balenciaga, was understandably disheveled. They were copulating in single-minded frenzy, and at the moment that the croupier exposed them to the crazed stares of players and onlookers, had reached a mutually delirious jouissance, the lengthy duration and accompanying howls of which caused several ruined gamblers to collapse with the carnal jitters. The police were, of course, called, and the offending couple arrested on a battery of misdemeanor charges. The young man, it turned out, was Ivan Hounsfield, a highly thought-of staff member at the nearby university, and his partner, Bridget Agustin, was the community-oriented wife of Martin Agustin.